Welcome to another Studio tutorial. In this video we're going to cover margins and padding to add spacing in your design. We'll talk about setting margins and padding, adding negative padding to create overlays, and the relationship between box widths and margins. Now if we click inside of this first box, we can see that the margin is the space outside of the box, and this is represented in orange in Studio. This green area is the padding or spacing inside of this box, and this is represented in green in Studio. Now let's click into one of these articles and let's change some of the spacing here because I think it needs a little bit of work. There's a few ways we can change the margin and padding. First, if we click inside any one of these nodes, our cursor will turn green and we can start to click and drag to set that padding, and that's the space inside of this box here. Now if I want to set the spacing in between these two boxes or outside of the box, I can hover my cursor outside of this node and I can start to drag to the right to set that spacing. I can also come up here into the top bar and I can change this padding and margin on the top bar. So let's just type in 10 pixels here, and let's go over here and type in 10 pixels as well. Now this spacing looks good, but I actually want this spacing on both sides. So I could independently drag this and try to match that. Or if I go over here into the properties, I can hit this lock icon right here, and this is going to lock it on both sides. So if I change this to 20 pixels now on one side, it's going to automatically change to 20 pixels on the other side. Now let's click this lock once more, and this is going to lock this padding on all four sides. So now if I select 20 pixels, this 20 pixels is going to be all around the box on the inside. Let's also set a 20 pixel margin. So I'm going to click twice to lock it on all four sides, and we'll select 20 pixels. And now that's all looking good, but if we click away, it looks a little bit funny compared to these other ones next to it. So you can actually apply these properties to multiple boxes by just clicking, holding down Shift, clicking again, and let's just quickly double click to lock all four sides, and let's change all of these here. We'll do the same thing with padding, double click, change this to 20 pixels, and now we can see that everything looks the exact same. If you want to fine tune all three of the boxes, we can select, hold down Shift and select the rest of them, and we can still use these drag handles here and just play around with it till we get something that works. I actually like it just butting up against, so we're not going to have any margins here, but then we do have padding here that's separating the text and images. In addition to using margins for spacing, we can also use what's called negative margin to get some nice effects. So for example, this box that we have right here, we want it to sit on top of this other box. And we can adjust the margin like we've done so previously, but as soon as we hit that 0 pixels, we can't overlap onto this other box. So a nice workaround for this, if we go to the top bar here under margin, and we can see this top bar field right here, we can set this to a negative value. Let's say we want this to sit 200 pixels above the bottom of this other box. So we're just going to type negative 200, hit return, and now that's sitting over this other box. So negative margins are a great way to overlap objects together. Let's talk about the relationship between margins and width. Now margins can sometimes affect the width of items, and it's important to understand how this works. Now we can see here with these news articles, we have a few images. Let's click inside of this one image for now, and we can change the margin, same as we've done many times before, and we can see when we do this, this image size doesn't change. And that's because the size of this image is actually in pixels, so it's always going to be 240 pixels. Now this image below is about the same size, but we're actually using a percentage in width instead of pixels. So this is 30% of its parent element. And just to see a little bit clearer how this works, let's change this to 50%. So if we change this to 50%, this image is cut in half, and this text is on the other half. Now when we set the margin is actually a part of this percentage. So we can see the image in this state with 0 pixels margin is 50% of its parent element. If we drag over here to the right to increase that, this image is going to start to be smaller, and that's because the image plus this margin space makes up 50% of its parent element. So if you're starting to change the margin in some items and starting to get some undesirable results, take a look in the styles bar and make sure that you're either set to pixels or percentage depending on your design. And that's it. We've now covered setting margins and padding, adding negative padding, and the relationship between widths and margins.